start our panel 7, that is on human security and non-state actors. Chairperson is Dr. Gilbert P. Moralista, who is Director, Gender and Development Office, Pangasinan State University, Philippines. Co-Chairperson Dr. Nitesh Bhatia, Assistant Professor, Department of Business Administration, Central University of Jharkhand, Ranchi, India. We have here many distinguished panelists. So over to you, Dr. Gilbert and Dr. Nitesh. Gilbert, can you hear us?
Yes, Dr. Nandini. It's clear. Thank you so much, and good evening to everyone, because it's already 7:48 in the evening here in the Philippines, and I'm very glad for this particular activity through the able leadership as the Govt convener of this 2022 Interdisciplinary Institute of Human Security and Governance, the International Conference, of course, headed by Dr. Nandini Basista, honored guests and dignitaries from India and other countries of the world that highlight this event. My co-chairperson, Dr. Nitesh Bhatia, Assistant Professor, Department of Business Administration, Central University of Jharkhand, India, other chairpersons and co-chairpersons, paper presenters, and participants. A pleasant evening to everyone. And I'm greatly honored and privileged to be the chairperson of this international conference assigned in human security and non-state actors. Without much ado, let us now start the presentation. Um, so in this panel 7, we have 11 presenters. And the first to present, we have here Dr. Pratham Prakash Parekh. The title of his study is Rethinking the Human Security Approach for Responding to COVID-19 in India. He is an assistant professor, Institute of Management, Nirma University, Gujrat. So let us welcome Dr. Pratham Prakash Parekh. Are you around?
Good afternoon, Chair. I'll share my presentation. I hope it is visible.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. Respected chairs and dear organizers and my colleagues, I'll be presenting on rethinking human approach, rethinking human security approach for responding COVID in India. As we know that COVID has shocked the world, and after any natural resource disaster, epidemic restoration and well-being is the key. I'm getting some message. Okay. Is the key for any kind of restoration work, and public health experts are mostly criticized for not working at their own efficiency level. Means they are not working efficiently, especially after disasters. So I tried to explore that how human security framework can be juxtaposed with the public health, and what kind of new solutions we can create that can help the victims in the post-pandemic situation. So my aim was to identify the gaps which can which can lead to the further research, and I have found out three basic areas where human security approach and public health framework can be juxtaposed. First is relief response through the coordinated multidisciplinary platforms. human security need assessment for identification of vulnerabilities, and devising a threshold, because we need to help people, but we have to decide up to what extent we can help, because well-being is very broad term. So these three areas I try to look out, because we'll start with the WHO's definition, where public health encompasses the idea of security. Okay, they mainly talk about the security of health of person. It can be combined with another definition of World Bank, where the public health is defined as a crucial features of of development, and it can be it can be easily clubbed with a human security approach. So I have tried to map the aspects of human security framework as well as the public with the public health framework, and probable tools which we can use for enhancing the public health response, especially after the pandemic. So in India, there was a big problem when there's a discourse analysis I have tried to do, where SARS-CoV-2 was debated for whether should be considered as an acute disease or the chronic disease, because by the laws or by the frameworks, chronic diseases needs to be taken care for a longer period of time. Okay, so while discussing COVID as a chronic disease, by pursuing the COVID disease, we can it gives a very problematic vision, because WHO's definition do not fit as a COVID as the chronic disease, because it can't be prevented through vaccination, it cannot be prevented through medication, it cannot be prevented by immunization. That was a definition of WHO, and COVID was not fitting into that. So there was another debate which says that long-term to chronic disease requires the biological, it has an effect on biological, psychological, and social aspects of human well-being. So if we assume COVID as a chronic disease, it attracts a lot of debate in health, especially in public health and governments. People are still debating on that. When it comes to the India, the burden of chronic diseases is 53%. Okay, and as for 2020, it's not the recent data. By 2020, 4.7% of death has happened because of chronic comorbidities. So for India, COVID pandemic is no lesser than the disaster for two basic reasons. First is the high population under the chronic disease burden, such as the epidemiological burden is very high, and high mortality in natural disasters. We are still having, in spite of enactment of National Disaster Management Act, we still have the more mortality during natural disaster. So the question comes, because of epidemiological transition, people with a chronic disease represents a larger proportion of victims that requires a care before as well as after the disaster. Okay, so in these terms, we can see before, during the pandemic and after the pandemic, the failure of these things can create, it can add to the more mortality rates. So I have tried to so in 2008, National Disaster Management Authority came up with the management of biological disaster. They have declared the virus or the epidemic as the how to manage, means they have a proper guidelines. By 2019, a new plan came up during lockdowns, and it dealt with extensively biological disaster and health emergencies. This broad legal framework had enabled the frontline responders and the caretakers to address the needs of victims, but that to a minimum level. Okay, they cannot go beyond their biologies. They cannot address the psychology. We have seen the pictures where people were trying to help the victims in the COVID wards, that they are giving some carers or people are going to care them. They used to dance in that isolation wards. Okay, so this kind of that was not happening at larger level, but at up to some extent it was happening. And the probable reason for neglecting this situation as disaster and not taking relief and restoration work. If you think COVID as a disaster, you need to take relief or restoration work. I have tried to find out some of the probable reasons. I have listed here. I'm not going to deal with each of everyone that in this presentation, but there exists in by the end of this section conclusion, I found that there is no proper guidelines in India which suggests the well-being restoration of the victim, especially in health disasters. So I brought it the health disasters or a public health disaster cycle, and I tried to juxtapose with the human security framework. Okay. So this kind of perception will enhance the public response to the disaster or even in health emergencies or health disasters. So this is the just juxtaposition of human security aspects. I have taken 3 aspects, that the freedom from want, freedom from fear, and freedom to live with dignity, with a public health disaster cycle, and how the components of human security can have interventions. Okay, this mapping. So the 3 areas of concerns which emerged after this mapping was we need to create a multidisciplinary platforms for relief response. Okay, where the responders or the people who are facing or taking care of the victims need to understand the psychological, the mental well-being of the person or the victim. This multidisciplinary platform will provide a systematic insight for the well-being and the rights of, accompanied with a common syntax. We can easily communicate at the national and international level. These platforms can have a various subsystems depending on the country's need and country's policies that can commonly evolve and have accepted solutions. These multidisciplinary platforms for human security will also back the complex requirement of COVID-19 victims, especially not only COVID, like there are other pandemic or epidemic or like Ebola or Zika, we can help those people. For that, we need to do a need assessment, which is based on human security framework, which includes a variety of assessment tools. Assessment tools for human securities are not new. Internationally, there are many tools available. The requirement is to extend these tools to the multidisciplinary platforms or frameworks which we are going to create.
Pratham, you
Yes.
need to stop in 5 minutes, and you already took, I think, 10 minutes. And Dr. Gilbert and Dr. Nitesh, one small request that we have to finish our session on time. We are already running late. So please ask all the presenters to stop after 5 minutes.
Okay, my basic argument is to enhance the contemporary relief and preparedness programs and policy actions without overhauling changes. Small changes can have a bigger impact. So that's it for now. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Parekh, for a very detailed presentation on your study about rethinking the human security, which is very applicable for today's situation, because even here in the Philippines, we are suffering the same, because that is a worldwide disease, biological, that includes biological, psychological, and social uh, uh, that includes social aspects, so that the people are suffering not only in India but all throughout the world. So thank you so much. It's very timely for you to for this particular study that you have. So I think Dr. Nitesh, do you have some question to the to our presenter?
Yes, sir. Sir, good evening.
Sir, can we take our question answer at the end of the session?
I was just going through all the titles which were mentioned up here. I found this particular theme itself to be very interesting, along with the paper. I would like to extend my regards to all in committee, our main host, and the speakers of today's theme. Looking forward to the second speaker. I would like to invite the second speaker up there in the list. Kindly present. I've already admitted all the candidates who were on the waiting list, please. Ma'am.
Okay, so if no question at all, thank you so much. And let's proceed now to the next presenter. Title is Beekeeping, its bearing on human security, eliminating poverty and path of SDGs in the Northeast region, India, to be presented by Dr. Sukamal, Dept. Sir, are you around?
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Good
Okay,
afternoon,
sir.
sir. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir, you can proceed now. It's our time is already you are allotted 5 minutes to present your study.
Yeah. So my topic is totally different from the previous one. Beekeeping, its bearing on human security, eliminating poverty in the paths of SDGs in the Northeast region, India. I would like to start with things, efforts to elevate poverty, keeping ethos of sustainable development goals, have bearing towards human security. Beekeeping is an activity that can address a couple of SDGs. It includes eliminating poverty, organizing climate action. We study the impact of beekeeping program of KVIC in Northeast region, India in this presentation. Honeybees are nature's most industrious and fascinating creature. Rapid deforestation is a threat to them. Beekeeping is an industry with so many benefits. It increases the yields of crop and helps in maintenance of ecological balance. Assuming sustainable development path, it supplements organic farming. It reduces poverty, hunger, and helps reducing gender inequality. Beekeeping encourages ecological awareness and maintenance of biodiversity. It has a special relevance for the Northeast region, India. Poverty alleviation, keeping ethos of sustainable development goal is the call of the hour. Our endeavor, both at individual level or as an organization's mandate to work towards elimination of poverty in a sustainable path is the subject matter of this article. Among a few innovative initiatives, beekeeping is one of them. Albert Einstein said, if the bee disappeared off the surface of the globe, then man would only have 4 years of life left. More than 1 lakh varieties of plants would disappear if they were not visited by the bees. Scientists believe that the honeybee has been in existence for approximate 30 million years, and beekeeping can address a couple of SDGs. It is a viable option for augmenting income in rural areas. As allied activities of agriculture, it is gaining popularity all over the world. Khadi and Village Industries Commission, an organization of the Government of India, has been dedicated to promote beekeeping. The objective of the study is to investigate how beekeeping can contribute to poverty alleviation, environmental corrections, and thereby implicitly upholding human security. We relate the beekeeping with the SDGs as it can address a couple of the goals. The method, I'm not going in details because time is very short. The methodology for this study was, the study aims to understand the dynamics of beekeeping and its connectivity in addressing the Sustainable Development Goal and its good effect on human security. This class of investigation is done with clearly defined parameters. The study is based on primary as well as secondary data. Information from the persons concerned and organizations were collected pertaining to core indicators. Structures questionnaires were applied. Secondary data was cross-verified wherever possible between the various statistics. The universe of the study, Northeast region India with her 65% forest cover favors honeybee propagation. Flanked by hills and with the mighty Brahmaputra river flashing a central path between its north and south, the Northeast India, potentially one of the richest geographical units of the country. The region reflects ecological and cultural contrast between the hills and the plains.
We
There are
still have
also
1 minute, sir.
significant elements of continuity. Kenya is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. It is a potential location for the domestication of several important plants and is an important focus area of archaeology. It has over 166 scheduled tribe people and over 400 other sub-tribal communities. Northeast region with over 220 ethnic groups and equal number of dialects makes it really a fascinating destination in the whole country. We will be very briefly going through some case studies. There is a
Sir,
village.
you have only 2 minutes left.
Okay, then what should I do?
You can give your findings.
I would just like to give you a very, very recent work what the KVIC has done. KVIC is an organization of Government of India which is dedicated for the inclusive rural development. And in doing this, we have brought a program which is called Reducing Elephant Human Attacks Using Bees. And we have taken it in one of the major states of the northeastern region called Assam. There is an appropriate initiative as nearly 500 people die every year due to elephant attack in India. In 10 years, 812 lives in Assam, 74 alone in a district called Gwalpara, causing misery to farmers. KVIC's innovative projects we have initiated in that district has shown a path of hope for the villagers and the farmers. Other project, bee fences are created by setting up bee boxes in the passages ways of elephants to block their
I think,
entrance
sir, time is over.
without harming the animals. Project rehab would prove to be sustainable solution to the human-elephant conflict that are very common in Assam. This project has direct intervention on human security in its wider sense. The findings of the study is that large-scale deforestation, depleting forests from forest results in the desertations and dwindling of the bee fauna in them. Afforestation with plants useful to bees, a source of bee forays round the year helps beekeeping. This may also develop the forest as a biological unit, maintaining an ecological balance, working towards achieving the SDGs. A systematic program of reforestation with bee plant can, in a few year time, sustain large number of bee colonies. In recent years, use of honeybees as pollinating agent.
I think video got stuck. So, Dr. Sukamal, are you there? Then Dr. Gilbert, we can go to the next presenter, I think. And your co-chairperson is traveling urgently, so I will be co-chair with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, Dr. Nandini. So, considering the fact that I think it's because of the technical problem that is happening right now, so let's now proceed to number 3, human security and
Sir, number 3 and 4 is not here. So we have to go to number 5, presenter.
okay. Thank you, Dr. Nandini, for the info. So let's now proceed to number 5, the community participation through ecotourism, assessing state and non-state governance in the Omsway Valley of Assam. So our presenter, we have here Somalia Ghosh. Are you around? You can now start.
Sir,
And
Somalo is not here. We have Koumudi Mahanta in 5.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
okay.
Okay, I hope I'm visible and audible.
Yes.
So-
We just let me introduce you. You are now introduce. I want to introduce Koumudi Mahanta, who is research scholar at JNU, New Delhi, and her topic of presentation is community participation through ecotourism, assessing state and non-state governance in the Usami Valley of Assam.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction, and good evening and good morning to everyone, depending where you are. I am Koumudi, and as ma'am said, I am a PhD scholar at the Center for the Study of Social Systems, Jawaharlal Nehru University. So first of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the entire IIHSG team for giving me this opportunity. I've been attending a few sessions since yesterday, and I must say that there have been some really insightful presentations, and it has been quite a learning experience so far. And coming to my paper, which is looking at community participation and governance through the sector of ecotourism in Umsuai Valley, actually happens to be one of my sites of study for my doctoral thesis. And I am currently working on the experience of state and non-state governance among the Tiwa tribe, which is an indigenous community in Assam. And during my whole process of deciding and confirming my field, I came across this region and found a process of community development taking place through facilitating ecotourism in the region. So this entire process involves both the local community and the state actors. And in this specific case of Umsuai, there is the existence of a unique form of state machinery called the Tiwa Autonomous Council. And the aspects that they seek to develop by developing tourism in the region are not very different from the much acknowledged understanding of ecotourism itself, which means that it is a responsible form of travel to natural areas that sustains and creates little to no damage to the environment, and also facilitates welfare and improvement in the standard of living for the local community. Now, what makes Umsuai an interesting area is because the local community residing is called the Hill Tiwa tribe, which is one of the two major subgroups within the larger Tiwa community of Assam, the other being the Plain Tiwa tribe. And at the same time, this categorization itself brings with it a long intertwining history of colonial demarcation of spaces and geography, of tribal assimilation and integration patterns within mainstream caste Hindu or the Assamese population, of land inheritance, acquisition under complex discourses of tribal governance, and ensuring and retaining autonomy of the particular tribe concerned. So taking ecotourism as the vantage point, which is an economic incentive out there in Umsuai, my work in progress paper tries to touch some of these aspects and connect how there are newer patterns of governance as well as new entities acting as governance agencies in this contemporary neoliberal world, which are getting molded, evolved, and they are evolving with new, older and existing state machineries. And they can sometimes be non-governmental organizations that work in partnership with the government, actors in the NGO, staff members who occupy a sort of ambiguous position, identifying both as a volunteer in one, like they might identify as a volunteer in one occasion, but as a bureaucratic servant in another, and so on. And for my theoretical framework in this paper, I have used Michel Foucault's concept of governmentality, which refers to the range of knowledge and techniques directed at maintaining the self through regulation of everyday conduct. It emphasizes the governing of people's conduct through positive means over sovereign power to formulate the law and the willing participation of those being governed. In governmental power, the government is no longer just one actor, but dispersed across institutions and practices. And unlike a typical vertical exercise of power through rules or through decisions, or through a strong bureaucratic structure, there is the addition of a horizontal framework found within and outside state institutions that cut across separate domains of the state, of the civil society, the family, and even personal life. The ensemble formed by these institutions, procedures, analysis, reflections allowed the exercise of this very specific complex form of power, which has at its target population the principal form of knowledge and political economy as its essential technical means of security apparatus. This notion of Foucault has been used and overused maybe over the years by several scholars, and Ferguson and Gupta, Aradhana Sharma, Partha Chatterjee, then Nandini Sundar are just a few names. Again, going back to the Hill Tiva categorization of the tribe, and this itself reflects a legacy of colonial administration and colonial.
More 2 minutes.
Okay, ma'am. Communities of the India's northeast, and the Tiva tribe, which falls under the Boro-Naga subgroup of Tibeto-Burman Sino-Tibet language family, and until colonial times, they were known as the Lalung. However, Tiva was their endonym, which is now the official term, and gradually Lalung has come to be identified as derogatory. At present, the Tiva population is most concentrated in Nagaon, Moragaon, Kamrup, Karbi Anglong, Lakhimpur, and Jorhat districts of Assam. Then the colonial, as like J.R. Mukherjee, Sanjeev Barua, T.A. Simpson have noted, colonial policies and spatial organization and frontier making had implicit power configurations that were perpetuated in creating a distance between the inhabitants of the hills and access to education, infrastructure, as well as modern economic processes. The colonial control was over the valleys, while the hills were considered as the spheres of influence and relegated to the peripheries. According to Kapai, this segregation is related to the larger issues of historically denying statehood to indigenous communities throughout the world and can be understood by looking at the philosophy behind the Western construct of the modern state entity. While Machiavelli identified legal demarcation of territoriality and monopolized use of physical force as important attributes, Thomas Hobbes emphasized state formation as requiring sovereignty conferred through a contract. It is when one renounces what is called the natural and uncontrolled freedom of nature. So when the Britishers in the Northeast found groups of independent villages existing with their own...
conclude, Koumudi.
So I've conducted a hybrid mode of data collection for my paper, and my notes gathered from the field have been through my field visits, wherein I had the opportunity to interact with Pamela, name changed, and her daughter Jessie, who are the owners cum managers of the first official homestay of the region. And they've mostly hosted researchers and filmmakers. And moreover, I've maintained interlocutors from Umswai, and they've been facilitating communication with a few village elders and assisting me in understand how this whole transition of not just the village landscape, but a predominantly agricultural area witnessing younger generations invest in somewhat novel economic sector has been taken by different generations. With further conversations and visits, I aim to explore how the notions of community participation and inclusion, development along with retaining tribal autonomy, gender equality, social justice principles, and the idea of collective rights over natural resources, etc., have been incorporated, addressed, or pondered over by those involved and connected with the ecotourism sector in Umswai Valley. And that would be the end to my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Koumudi Manta, for a very detailed presentation about the community participation, which is really advantageous, especially to the native people of that particular area or the community, as long as it does not uh, violate the existing laws that you have in your country, and at the same time in the preservation of the natural resources of the respective community. So thank you so much for a very detailed presentation. So I think Dr. Nitesh, are you around? If you have some clarifications about the presentation.
Sir, actually, Dr. Nitesh is not around. He's traveling, so he said to manage this session with you, to me.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. If he's not around, so let's just proceed to the next presenter. So the next study is a corporate governance and SAM-DAAM-BAND DAAM-DAND-BHED policy of Kautilya to be presented by Sandeep Pakasi. Sir? Okay, you can start now.
Everybody hear me?
Sandeep, we can't see you. Sandeep, we can't see you.
Hello, can you hear me?
I think Sandeep, you are having extreme network issue. Can you?
I think there's a technical problem. Okay, okay. Okay, you may proceed.
Shall I continue the presentation, or the voice is distorted? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello, everybody. I'm presenting on the case on the topic that is a paper, Corporate Governance and SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED Policy of Kautilya. The topic is this paper covers few aspects. What is meant by the corporate governance, and how the Kautilya's SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED policy, because this is a Kautilya is a well-known philosopher in India, and he is considered as one of the management guru. So there are several matters, several papers or several articles related to him are available in the market. See, the first one, I'm talking about the corporate governance. When we are talking about the governance can be simply considered as the manner by which operations are carried out effectively, efficiently, and ethically. The governance we can differentiate into the sovereign and corporate. In corporate governance, in this terminology, the proper corporate governance terminology is not defined in the Indian Companies Act. Many institutions, committees, and authors have tried to define it in varied manners. Committees like Cadbury, they and other committees just like Kumar Mangalam Mirla or Narayan Murthy, they have tried to define it as a system by which the companies are managing its business ethically and prudent manner, and whereas the shareholders' value are preserved. Corporate governance usually roams around four aspects. One is the shareholders, board of directors, management, and risk management. In shareholders, they are trying to protect the shareholders' interest. In the board of directors, we can see how the composition of boards are there, whether there are independent director or executive directors are there, whether the related parties transactions are there. And management, where how the management directors or the managing committees or management board, they are qualified, whether there is a transparency or whether there is a proper reporting channel. In risk management sector, we can see that there are audit committees, or whether the independent directors are really independent, or compliances are met or not. In Kautilya's this paper, I have tried to understand how this SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED principle was applied. Kautilya, in his in his writing, in his book, he has mentioned several principles. One of them is a SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED policy. The other one is a Ram Mandala theory, which is again a very famous one, which means your neighbor is your natural enemy. And in addition to that, there are other several principles which are very well known. There you can see there were thousands of papers which are promoting Kautilya as a management guru. Hardly there is only one paper which is criticizing Kautilya. I have mentioned that paper in my literature also.
In this paper, I particularly try to understand whether the policy which is stated by Kautilya is really relevant in contemporary period or not. So to understand this, we will try to understand what is meant by SAM, DAAM, DAND, and BHED. SAM is nothing but a conciliation or negotiation. This business, as per the corporate governance principle of business, it is acceptable. DAAM, it is nothing but a gift or some kind of monetary benefits to be passed on. Naturally, when there is a this kind of giving gifts, even in India, Diwali gifts are very much popular. But even if giving any kind of gifts in the corporate culture, it is considered as a very close to the bribery and considered as unfair trade practices. So this is again one negative point. DAAM-DAND-BHED, the punitive actions will be considered created, which is again criticized by the current corporate culture. And BHED, that is a divide and rule policy, which is unethical and which is nothing but an outcome of the insecurity, and which creates a disharmony and untrust between the teams of the member. The research objective of this paper is nothing but whether the SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED policy is really in consonance with the contemporary legal practices of the corporate governance or not. The methodology is simply literature review and primary research. The research is conducted of 40 people, and the tool was nothing but a Google form. In this study, I have I concluded. Yeah, I am concluding. I'm concluding, ma'am. In this study, we found that SAM is nothing but a conciliation or negotiation, which is okay, which is permissible as per the corporate governance, and other three principles, other three part of that principle, DAAM, DAND, BHED, which are not acceptable. So as a whole, if we will go with the SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED policy, which is contradicting to the corporate governance, and again, which should not be applicable in the contemporary business environment. So to conclude with the last statement, Kautilya might have done very good work for the economics, might have been succeeded at that time, but in contemporary world, SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED may not be used in the current corporate governance principles. Here I will conclude, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for that very detailed presentation, and at the same time that gave us the idea, considering that I am a Filipino. So I already learned some term, the SAM-DAAM-DAAM-BHED. I think that which you have mentioned for now, considering that we're in the contemporary period, I think it's not applicable. So thank you so much for that very kind presentation that you have. Okay, so I think there no question for Madam
Hello.
Nandi. Do you have additional points to consider?
Sir, I would.
Yes, sir. So
Yes, sir.
let us
Sorry, sir.
welcome Dr. Nitesh. Do you have some
Thank you, sir.
comment?
Yes, sir. So there is one particular comment on this particular paper. I would like to comment on this paper regarding the Kautilya's Earth Shastra. I would like the speaker to just put a light on this particular topic, that whether Kautilya's Earth Shastra is actually applicable in today's management time or not. Because in today's time in India, there are so many corporates which are actually going back to Kautilya's Earth Shastra teachings being incorporated at their workplace. So what is the speaker's opinion about that?
Thank you, Doctor. Here, my opinion is very simple. Arthashastra has given us so much literature in this. If you will go through all this literature, most of the people, I think they have not read that Arthashastra. I don't deny that is a very good piece of literature, but as per the management perspective, these principles may not be clear, and they should not be considered as a really management guru. There are so many things which can contradict. There are so many principles, just like a principle of equality, which is a constitutional right, which is a right as per the USDR, United Nations human right principles. Again, this principle is contradicted by by Kautilya in his Arthashastra. I don't want to go into that topic, because that will again raise some kind of voices against some kind of racial terms. So I don't want to go into that. Secondly, as I said, he has given a 2-3 policies. One is related to the SAM-DAAM-DAND-BHED. Obviously, everybody will agree with that. This policy is not and should not be used in contemporary place. But still, it has been used, and there are thousands of followers of these policies for their personal benefits, and therefore some kind of bias to this ideology which is promoted by by Kautilya or his Arthashastra. So that is again a very bad. Third policy that I have tried to speak about, the Mandala policy. Mandala policy, we are into the welfare state, and when we are in the welfare state, our neighbor is our friend. As per the Kautilya, our neighbor is our enemy. If we can we say that our neighbor is our enemy? So in this particular phase, no. But still, the people are considering him as a management guru. That is really something different to understand at this part of time. I consider that completely as a bias towards the religion, or as bias towards some personal. It would be the result of the personal bias, I can say. Sorry for taking some more time on this, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for that detailed answer about the query of Dr. Nitesh about your study. So I think this time and proper for us to proceed to the next presenter. Okay, our next presenter.
Sir, we don't have V. Samudeshwari with us now. We have Alak Kumar Sharma.
The shrinking space. Okay, so let's now proceed to number 8. The shrinking space of civil society in tribal development and its impact on human security in Jharkhand. So to be presented by Alok Kumar Sharma. Sir,
Good
are you
afternoon.
right?
Good evening, all. Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm going to present a small PPT. Okay.
You have only 5 minutes. So up to 6:10, you have to conclude.
Okay. So my topic is the shrinking spaces of civil society in tribal development is impact on the human security in Jharkhand. So in this paper, I will talk about how an RLM program has become a key player in the civil society discourse, and the new FCRA amendment has affected dissent on the ground. And further, the foreign funded hybrid projects, that means the one party is government and another party is foreigner, and third party is the implementing field NGOs. And later on the human right violation and dissent on the human security in the context of Jharkhand. So about this paper, I followed the longitudinal research design based on the key informant interviews and analysis of secondary sources. In primary sources, I have done interviews with NGO representatives, L.B.S, which is the SRM of Jharkhand, representatives and community leaders, the BLF members, BLF board members. And the secondary sources, I have quoted the reports of NRLM and multinational donors and FCRA reports and news reports. So basically, I will start with something related to CSOs in historical terms. So after independence, Gandhian NGOs has the a specific space in rural development until Indira Gandhi came to the power, and there was a phase of instability of government, and she came and tried to put a restriction on the CSOs. He brought FCRA rules, and the JP movement. There were 300 NGOs, Gandhian NGOs, who participate actively. And then when he came back into the power, he tried to punish 900 NGOs who was receiving in foreign fundings. Then the current scenario after 2014, there was an RLM program nationwide, which had the huge outreach in terms of SHG outreach. In Jharkhand, there are 33 lakhs household which are registered in SHG fold. So the donors, the foreign donors, which was looking for the community repo and a large outreach, community outreach, they have got in the NRLM program. Again, the implementation of many social welfare programs after new liberal policy, there were a backment of the central government from the social welfare programs, and there were huge donation and foreign fundings came into the CSOs forum. But after NRLM program, all this fund went again back to the NRLM folds, SRLM folds. So from implementing to feedback to monitoring, all works are being done by these SHG members. So what is happening on the ground right now? So okay, I am going to present the findings. So what is happening on the ground? The JSLPS and the NGOs are tussling with the same community. The same community member has been registered in the both programs, and there has been a tension between them. Again, the what has the FCRA done to the in Jharkhand, that 295 registered FCRA association has been cancelled in last 10 years, and 220 registered FCRA has been seized in just last year. So there is a fear among the registered NGOs that government will call them the anti-national or Maoist supporter NGOs, and they will cancel their FCRA. So it has been affected a lot dissent on the ground, and there has been a few reports which shows that there has been a decline in CSOs, FCRA funding and CSR funding to the tribal states like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. Again, the human rights violation, I can quote is incident.
Please conclude, Alok.
So like, okay, concluding. So the human rights violation has no approach. Sorry, my line has cut. So there has been no dissent and resistance from the CSOs because they don't have funds or outreach in the terms they should have been. So again, the hybrid projects, the major funders like DM, GF, WHH, IIHSG, and APF has been went through hybrid projects. They are funding any particular NGOs. They are funding the government NGOs through the government, and there has been a discourse in a CSO. They are being corporate NGOs. Corporate NGOs that mean they are following the government pathways and they are not questioning the government. Again, the conclusion in the time of the COVID.
Yes, I think we can go for the next presentation.
I was not audible in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Dr. Gilbert?
Okay, so let us now proceed to number 9, the Human Security and International Organizations, to be presented by Manju Thakur.
Sir, Manju Thakur and Sunil Kumar and Pooja Shukla are not here. But we have Shomalok Ghosh with us, who left actually that time. Somallo, no, Somallo is also not here. Yeah, I think no other presenter is here.
Okay. So what about the impact of corporate governance policies on the financial performance of the company?
Sunil
We
Kumar
have
is
here
not here.
Independence Directors, a comparative study of India and Australia by Pooja Shukla.
No, she is also not here.
Okay.
I think we can conclude here.
Okay. So in this particular juncture, thank you very much for the panel of presenters who had presented their papers with a very detailed and of course uh, a very detailed presentation, and I think this is also one way in the utilization later by the government of India as well as even in the private sectors where the papers are applicable. Thank you so much for your active participation in this particular international conference, of course hosted by the IIHSG um, with Dr. Nandini Basista as the convener. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert, and thank you all the panelists who presented their paper. Thank you, Dr. Nitesh Bhatia. I can understand that sometime we can't control our destiny or fortune, anything. Anyways, now I want to start our next session, which is a special session on governance, state politics, and human security. That is organized by Department of International Relations, Central University of Jharkhand, India. I want to invite Chairperson Dr. Alok Kumar Gupta, who is head of the department and Dean, Department of International Relations, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Central University of Jharkhand, India, and Co-Chairperson Divya Mishra, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Magad University, Bodh Gaya. Over to you, Dr. Alok and Divya.
Thank you, Dr. Nandini. Am I audible?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity in this international conference. We have a very short duration of 1 hour, and I think we have roughly 8 papers. So given the 60 minutes that I have, I think each of the speakers should not speak more than 5 minutes. Whatever time is left towards the end, maybe me or my co-chairperson will try to reflect upon the presentations. So straight away, I invite, if my co-chairperson permits me, I invite Miss Sneha Singh, Assistant Professor, St. Xavier's University. She is going to share her research on corruption, human security, governance nexus. Does human development matter?
Sir,
Miss
she
Sneha
has
is not
a
there.
co-author. She has a co-author, Shovik Mukherjee, who is also assistant professor.
Right. I'm sorry, I forgot to make a mention of Mr. Shovik Mukherjee. If either of them or both of them are there,
yes,
whosoever
Shovik is
decides
there.
to make a presentation, kindly go ahead.
Shovik, I made you co-host,
Yes.
so you can share your screen here.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just take a minute to share my screen. Ma'am, is my screen visible? If you can give me a heads up.
Yes.
Okay. So should I start, sir? Should I start?
Yes.
So a very good evening to one and all present here. A very good evening to Nandini ma'am, to the chairperson and to the co-chair. So this paper particularly is a co-authored paper with Professor Sneha Singh. Ma'am is also there with us. So as the title of the paper reads, corruption, human security and governance nexus, does human development matter? As Chairman Sir has said, I'll try to stick to the limit of 5 minutes so that I don't generate any negative externality for my fellow presenters. Now I'll straight away hit the topic and why we are kind of looking at this topic, the basic motivation. Now, particularly all of us are aware about the definitions of governance, human security, and corruption. I don't have to explain the definitions because there are people who are more qualified to talk on this. But particularly in essence, why we have chosen this topic, it's because now these are very kind of independent dimensions till date that we get to see in the literature. To a certain extent, human development and governance has been mapped. There is a rich literature on that. Human security came into the picture and got mapped with along with corruption to reflect on human development. But what has been interesting is this nexus, that how you are looking at these three components together, just the conceptual framework. If you read the last point, that if you don't have like basic motivation, if you don't have a good governance mechanisms, people will not fully participate. So your human security is getting compromised. Now, if your human security is getting compromised at the very basic level, so there can be an issue where people won't be able to speak up and their voices won't be heard. And you know, if your voices don't get heard, there is a direct binding constraint on good governance, and we can land up in a situation of corruption which might go unabated. So this kind of trivariate nexus that we are talking about is something which and how it kind of is important for human development. That is the storyline. Now, this is just a kind of where human security came. This is a timeline diagram. I'll not kind of waste my time in explaining these things. Straight away, I'll cut short the review of select literature. There's a kind of a very rich literature on this. Literature section is very rich, but there is one point here. The point that I'm trying to make here before I go to the methodology section is these are very analyzed in a very disjoint way. One has not been integrated into the other. If you are trying to look at a complete picture that whether there is any impact of these three taken together on human development, that is something one needs to understand. Now, why I'm kind of but one hand, I'm telling that there is a rich literature, and then I'm saying that there is this disjoint concept, is because in the literature also, there is an issue. Now, with this methodology part, I'll try to bring in the three basic simple variables that we have taken. One is the governance indicator. One is the corruption perception index. One is the human security index. Now, if you are if you have followed governance indicators, you will find that there is something called control of corruption. What we did was we re-estimated the governance indicators and then kind of normalized and standardized it on a 0-1 scale, maximum minus minimum, actual minus minimum by maximum minus minimum. We removed this control of corruption because we wanted to have corruption separately, not as a part of governance. Because at times what happens, empirically, the results, what we have seen in the literature, there is not a very strong evidence with regards to how corruption influences human development, how corruption affects governance, because there are both pros and cons. I'm not going into that debate. Now, the second is the corruption perception index by Transparency International. And the third one, I'll again kind of draw your attention. This is the human security index. Now, this human security index kind of again has three fabrics: economic fabric, social fabric, environmental fabric. What we did was we removed the economic fabric. Why? Because it contains indices which are a part of human development index that UNDP has. So if I estimate one index which has the components of human development index and then try to regress it, automatically I'll get very good results, and then I'll be able to kind of say, this has a very high correlation, so this will be it. So that's not what the objective is, and people generally have made the mistake here in the literature. When you are trying to correlate two things where you have components which are kind of 75% common, you are going to get very good results. So the true picture does not get reflected. So what we did, we brought in a panel data framework. I'll just go to the results directly to cut short and maintain the time limit. Now we have done this panel regression on a kind of cross-country setup of 100 countries for the period 2010 to 2020. Now these 100 countries, wherever data was available based on the categorization of human development indices where countries have been ranked. So high development, high HDI value countries are also there, low HDI value countries are also there, and we estimated this model. Now, surprise here, nothing is surprising because it's very obvious that you have, when there is corruption, there is an impact.
Kindly conclude in 30 seconds.
Yes, sir. I'll just wrap up. So these results are not kind of very obvious, but what is very significant here is that when I'm doing the causality part, that which is influencing what, we find strict evidence of the fact that, which is very kind of significant here, is that corruption, human security, and governance are kind of impacting human development, and the causality runs from these three variables to human development. There is one exception, however. Corruption and human development are both way causal. They are kind of HDI influences corruption, corruption influences HDI. Now this has an interesting result, sir. I'll take 30 seconds more. Now, as I have stated, for all focus variables are having significant effect on human development. Now, we took the inequality adjusted value because we wanted to negate the impact of inequality. Otherwise, we again might land up into some form of a bias. Now, what we are kind of observing, this is very in sync with the literature, but the literature kind of does not take into account these three components together, is that high governance kind of indicators which are very consistent with countries which have a very high level of HDI. So there is a positive result there. Secondly, what we are kind of promoting is the fact that if you combine human security initiatives to address systems there, it should be made effective. It should not be the case that you are addressing there is a human right kind of mechanism there, but the judicial system is not effective to address those human rights. So we talk about sustainable solutions towards the end of the paper, where we look at the intersecting dimensions of these three variables. That's it, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Souvik.
Thank you.
I understand you had very short span of time.
Yes.
The kind of quantitative and qualitative research that you have done, it warrants somewhere a full hour. Your paper seems to be quite interesting. Congratulations for that. Maybe we will have something of it towards the end. May I now invite Sajad Ahmed Mir, who is going to share his research on e-governance in India, challenges faced in implementation. Sajad, you are there?
No, I think Sajad is not here.
Okay, so may I now invite Dr. Megha Kumari, Assistant Professor.
Megha Kumari is also not here.
Okay, Dr. Manju Meena, are you there?
No.
Twinkle Singhal?
Yes.
Okay, Twinkle Singhal, she is a student of Amity School of Applied Sciences, Noida. She is going to share her thoughts on human security and governance. Twinkle, next 5 minutes is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Mr. Alo, for giving me this opportunity. Well, I am Twinkle Singhal, and currently I'm pursuing my master's in technology, majoring in solar and alternative energies. I belong to Uttar Pradesh, India. This was my quick introduction, and before starting it or sharing my thoughts, I would like to ask the entire panel and rest of the people that what is human security according to you? I would like your attention on this question, and I'll answer it myself. Well, at its core, human security. Sure, sir, I'll start my video. Am I visible?
Yes. Go ahead.
So at its core, human security is about protecting people, but human security altogether is a multifaceted concept. Despite of articulated links to both the development and security fields, alternative definitions abound human security. So my purpose of choosing this topic is to focus upon that one consequence, which has been the emergence of the entire concept of human security. Public understanding of this security term is hampered by many myths and I'm sorry. Yeah, so it has been hampered by many myths and misunderstanding about its nature, which often spend outside a state of generalized poverty, which makes it an agenda of research. So mentioning the myths, they could be the wars are getting deadlier. And as per the recent news, we can consider Russia and Ukraine case under this umbrella. Another could be the number of deliberate destruction, which has been increased. So in the past decade and also in present times, when it comes to state and human security combined, effective policies doesn't just need extra resources or greater political commitments, but it also requires a better understanding of global and regional security and a wise conflict preventions and mitigation strategies while other fail. So there are no official data or regional armed conflicts trending, but in part because governments cannot agree on what should be measured and what shouldn't be measured. So nevertheless, we're thinking the concept of security, which is no longer based on the traditional ideas of sovereignty, territory, or military power, but rather on achieving freedom from fear and freedom for want. These are the bases that establish the rights to human rights, and they all have the search of human dignity as a common root. So we argue that the human security, despite its theoretical difficulties, may suffer in conceptual integrity, but it can be worked in practice. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Twinkle, for meeting the time deadline. May I now invite...
Sir, Devaki Nandan is not here.
There. Okay. Naurem Malim Sana.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm
Okay.
here, sir. Am I audible, sir, and visible?
Yes, yes, you are audible as well as visible. Kindly
Thank
go
you,
ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Next
Good evening.
5 to 6 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. With the due permission from the chairperson, co-chair, and Ma'am Nandini. Today, I am going to present a paper on mapping the changes in governance of the BJP-led coalition government in Manipur. Here, basically, I will highlight 1, 2, 3 points only. In fact, Manipur is one of the northeast states of India, inhabited mainly by different indigenous communities, especially Meitei Pangal, that is the local Muslim population, Nagas and Kukis, and so on. But Manipur is topographically divided into hills and valley, and valley portion of Manipur is constituted only 1/10 geographical area of the land, and the hill areas were mainly inhabited by the hills, and valley are mainly occupied by the Vaishnavite communities, that is so-called the Meiteis communities. But Manipur became the part of the Indian Union state in 1949. In the post-merger Manipur, we see the escalation of violence because of the armed conflict between the state and non-state actors, those who oppose the integration of Manipur to the Indian Union. But I'm not going to take the issue to that point, but rather my intention was just to highlight that Manipur in the contemporary society, we used to face the burnt of the violence and armed conflict. And as I will take one example, that Manipur became a classic case for understanding the present violence. And because of this violence that we see with the imposition of Armed Forces Special Power Act in 1958, there is a growing tendency on the part of the both state and non-state actors to go for any form of violence. For example, by the security forces in the name of countering the insurgency, they also commit violence. On the other hand, militants also simultaneously create violence and bans and blockades. And the kind of pattern that has been witnessing in Manipur is again extended to civil societies organization, whether it is of a student body or any association. They used to call ban and blockades. I will take one example of 2005. Here we have almost 80 bans and blockades, and one case of ban was of 52 days long. It was from June to August in 2005, and according to the state's economy, it affected almost 550 crores that became a loss. So that was the kind of phenomenon that we see in Manipur. But after the coming of the BJP government, I'm not saying that BJP is providing good governance or something that ensure human security. But what we see here in the present chief minister had done two important programs. One is Go to Hills and Go to Villages. And he was trying to, in fact, the aim was to give or provide government scheme at the doorsteps in the remote parts of the region. But the actual effect of this program was not of providing the government schemes or any, for that matter, any welfare scheme. Rather, it touches the heart of the people, because he was going from door to door, and it became a moment for the people to have interaction with him personally. So it was a kind of participatory governance in one say. That is what I would like to first emphasize here. And another part that he took up was the issue of ILP, inner line permit system, which had been applied in different states of Northeast region. When the CAP was about to introduce in the parliament, there was a huge cry in the state of Manipur. Bans and dharnas and blockades were, because the population here is very small, and the indigenous population, according to 2001 census, it was almost 670,000 indigenous population, whereas the outsiders coming from other states of India and illegal migrants from Bangladesh and Myanmar, it constitute almost 7 lakhs. And the people, the indigenous peoples, have the fear for swapping their population and their resources by the outsiders. So there was a huge cry for this, some sort of legal protection of their land and resources. So in this time, the inner line permit system was given by the government of India. And that became a very interesting, because the CAP was not applicable to the state of Manipur. In that way, the moment for CAP was at least compromised up to some extent by applying this inner line permit system. So these are some of the changes that has been brought by the BJP government in Manipur. No doubt, BJP is a right-wing political party in India and talks about a Hindu belt in Hindustan and many things. But in this state, the idea of Hindutva is dynamic, and it is malleable and flexible, and they are of trying to make a good governance in the state of Manipur. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Naurem.
Thank you, sir.
I have been told, Dr. Nandini, by Dr. Vibhuti, that Mr. Raymond Sun Lau from Hong Kong is also scheduled to make his presentations on operationalizing human security in this session on. So, Mr. Raymond, I could see you. You are here with us. Kindly make your presentation.
Good afternoon, good evening, Professor. So am I audible and visible to
Yes, yes,
you?
you are both audible as well as visible. Kindly
Okay,
go ahead.
thank you. So let me share the PowerPoint slides. Okay, can you guys see the PowerPoint slides that I'm
Yes, yes,
sharing?
yes.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, again, a very good afternoon, good evening to you guys. Okay, so first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my initial thoughts and observation on this paper. The topic of this paper is provisionally entitled as Implementing Human Security and What Role for the Responsibility to Protect the R2P Principle. Again, my name is Raymond Kun Sen Lau, originally born and raised in Hong Kong, and currently I'm working as an assistant professor at North South University, Bangladesh. Okay, so let me start. Okay, so so since the birth of the human security concept back in the 1994, so this year actually marks the 28th anniversary. Right? I mean, since the birth of this human security concept, when the concept was brought to life, okay, in the 1994 Human Development Report, produced by the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program. And since then, what we have witnessed is the UN, the United Nations, has made efforts to promote human security. Okay, that includes the establishment of the United Nations Trust Fund for Human Security in 1999 and the Commission on Human Security, the CHS, in 2003, respectively. And particularly important here, perhaps, is the adoption of the resolution, okay, 66/290, okay, by the UN General Assembly back in 2012. This is for the first time, human security has been recognized, okay, by the UN as an approach to assist member states in identifying and addressing widespread and cross-cutting challenges to the survival, livelihood, and the dignity of their people. Yet, while there has been thematic debates and panel discussion on human security within the UN, okay, there has been a gradual shift away, okay, from the advocacy of human security to the responsibility to protect R2P among the key UN member states. But perhaps little attention has been paid to exploring the role of R2P in terms of promoting or implementing this human security concept. Okay, so in this paper, so therefore what I'm trying to do, two objectives. Okay, first is to understand the relationship between the R2P principle and human security. And second, I would pay particular attention to how this R2P principle can play a role in operationalizing or implementing human security. So in line with the efforts, okay, of the former Canadian Foreign Minister, Lloyd Axworthy, okay, to situate what he called human security in the R2P era. So I argue in this paper that the R2P principle can help clarify the scope and sharpen the focus of human security, thereby strengthening the implementation of the human security concept. So R2P principle, therefore, as I argue, can be used as a policy framework or as a mobilization tool for strengthening, okay, this people-centered human security concept. So I'm trying to do three things, okay, despite, okay, the time constraint. So first is I'm going to give you guys a very brief overview of the human security concept and also the emergence of the R2P principle back in 2001 in terms of exploring its values and its contribution. And third, perhaps most importantly, I'm going to illustrate this relevance of the R2P principle again for the promotion and implementation, okay, of the international community's commitment to human security. Again, I think as many of you may be aware of this, again, right, this human security concept, again, its origin could be traced back, okay, to the release of this 1994 Human Development Report, okay, by the UNDP. Particularly important here, perhaps, is the emphasis being placed on the safety and well-being of ordinary human beings. Okay, again, this human security concept is composed of some 7 core elements. And the growing importance of human security, okay, apart, okay, from its attempt to problemize, okay, this traditional state-centric security network framework, perhaps the growing importance of human security is closely connected, okay, by the emergence of what can be known as the International Human Protection Regime, okay, the IHPR. So in many ways, the central difference, okay, between human security, okay, and the traditional concept of state-centric security is its focus on individual human being, okay, rather than the state, okay, as the main reference object of security. Okay, and okay, talking about the R2P, the responsibility to protect principle. So again, its origin, it could be traced back, okay, to the release, okay, of this report, okay, which is entitled The Responsibility to Protect. The report being produced by the International Commission on Intervention and State Sovereignty. So in its simplest sense, okay, R2P placed the emphasis on the responsibility, okay, of each and every sovereign state to protect their people, okay, from avoidable catastrophe. But in case of a state's unwillingness or inability to do so, then that responsibility must be borne by the broader community of state. So in many ways, R2P can be understood here as a collective international political pledge in terms of honoring the international community's commitment of preventing and responding to mass atrocity. So since the birth of the R2P principle in 2001, so what we have witnessed, okay, is the efforts being made by, for example, the UN Security Secretary General, so for example, Ban Ki-moon, to further elaborate and implement this R2P principle. Particularly important here, perhaps, is his advocacy of a 3 pillars approach, okay, in his 2009 report. And since then, the R2P principle, okay, has been gradually institutionalized, okay, within the UN system, okay, in the form of Security Council resolutions and presidential statements being produced by the UN Security Council, okay, reports being released by the UN Secretary General, okay, since 2009, and the annual debates, okay, within the UN General Assembly. Okay, so just a very quick discussion in terms of what potential contribution this R2P principle has made. So in many ways, okay, R2P principle is, or can be understood, okay, as a reconceptualization, okay, of the meaning of sovereignty. So sovereignty is no longer considered or understood, okay, as control, authority, and non-intervention, but instead, okay, it constitutes responsibility. And in many ways, okay, this could also be understood as a dramatic shift of attention from what is being known as the right to intervene to the responsibility to protect. So essentially a victim-centered approach, right? And perhaps most importantly, what R2P is being emphasized here is, okay, it is a formulation of a set of symbiotically interlinked responsibility. So namely, this is a responsibility to prevent, responsibility to react, and the responsibility to rebuild. So now, let me very quickly talk about, again, how R2P can help promoting and implementing human security. I think in many ways, or to begin with, human security concept, okay, and R2P, okay, they are closely connected together because, okay, they both share this collective efforts, a collective commitment in terms of addressing threats relating to the safety and security of individuals. And this human security roots of the R2P, okay, as suggested by scholars Alex Bellamy and Edward Luck, okay, this can be identified, okay, in the 2001, okay, the ICISS report. And the R2P principle, according to, again, the former Canadian Foreign Minister Lloyd Axworthy, it sufficiently pays homage to the human security approach since, in his words, and I quote, it focuses international attention and calls for actions fashioned around where it is most needed, on the victim. So in this sense, the ICISS report has effectively offered an opportunity for human security in practice because states are no longer permitted to harm their populations without consequences. So the safety and protection of civilians is now since at the forefront of decision making. So here, the preventive aspect of R2P, so namely the responsibility to prevent, is also logically connected to the concept of human security, since the emphasis is being placed on addressing both the root causes and the direct causes of conflict. So a clear understanding of how R2P can play a role, okay, in promoting and implementing human security, in my opinion, can help
Mr. Raymond, if you could wind up in 1 minute.
Concept. Sure, yeah, so this is actually my final PowerPoint slides. Okay, so let me quickly conclude. So the potential contribution that the R2P principle can make, okay, in terms of promoting and implementing the human security concept. Okay, so talking about R2P's potential contribution to the human security implementation, I think what we need to clarify first of all is what functions R2P is meant to achieve. So the function accordingly is twofold. First, R2P can function as a policy agenda approach. So here the meaning is, okay, R2P in this sense can help enabling heads of states and governments to be more sensitive, okay, to the importance of providing security for the individuals. Okay, second function that R2P is meant to fulfill is it provides an effective catalyst for timely and decisive international action in the face of mass atrocities that is being known as the speed act approach. So taking this into account, the R2P's effectiveness, okay, can act as a catalyst for mobilizing timely and decisive international action. And particularly important here perhaps is the R2P's so-called narrow but deep focus to atrocity prevention. So, and this narrow but deep focus of R2P can help clarifying, narrowing, and sharpening the scope of human security, thereby contributing to the clarification and the sharpening of human security concept. This is basically what I would like to share for today. So thank you once again very much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and preliminary observation in this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raman. Thank you. Responsibility to protect indeed is one of the hallmark for most governments of the world across, most political leaders across the world. And your paper was quite informative to this effect. May I now request my co-chair, Dr. Divya Mishra, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science. Ma'am, if you can make some observations or some interventions, if you have some clarifications, kindly go ahead. You need to unmute yourself first.
Thank you. First of all, my warm greetings to Alok sir, and thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. And thank you, IIHSG, for giving me this platform to co-chair. I would like to make some brief comments on the overall theme of this panel, as well as the papers which were presented. First of all, we are dwelling upon the role of state, government, and human security. And if we see that even if the intentions that guide the government and the policymakers, especially in democracies, even if the intention is well built, there are some systemic and structural constraints despite all the goodwill. And such systemic constraints can be seen in the form of issues of corruption. So this corruption is so endemic and so structural that some examples we can see. And also in democracies, there is compulsion of populism in policy making, which refrains the government from any kind of, we can say, new policies, and they go on with the trend of incremental policy makings. Even if some new measures are taken, they are held with doubt. So incrementalism, I think, is the best way, which is seen by democratic regimes in policy making. The first paper, it was very interesting. It was very empirical paper mentioning the cause-effect relationship of the trivariate means. And very interesting point was made at the end, that combining human security to address human rights and the role of judicial system. So we have three variables here: human security, human rights, and the judicial system. In the context of India, if we take the example of PDS system, and there was rampant corruption in the entire system. And the previous governments, like in the era of Rajiv Gandhi, it was commented that out of every 1 rupee, 80 paise gets siphoned off. So the transparency mechanisms, if we say in the form of Aadhaar, when the ration cards were linked, we can see the flip side as well. Many ration cards, they were deregistered because of the inability of linkages with this digital system. So we are trying to digitalize, we are trying to move forward through e-governance measures, but still there are some roadblocks which need to be addressed by both the governments and the civil society. And I can see this positive vibe in the paper of Mr. Nauram as well. So in his area of study, he said that the Hindutva dynamic is very flexible in Manipur, and the various measures of good governance, doorstep delivery of basic services being initiated by the government. So these are, we can say, some heartening measures which we are discussing at the end of today's debates and all. And it's very good to hear all these brightening and we can say positive comments about this. And finally, Mr. Raymond, your paper was very brilliant, and all the discussion on a role of responsibility to protect. And you gave 3 mechanisms: prevent, react, and rebuild. Very well put. But my question is, if these things are not followed in a continuum, like prevention and reacting, we have seen this. prevention and reacting in name of democracy or in name of other things. But the most important part of rebuilding that is often left in midst. We can see world examples like in Afghanistan. So how to complete this continuum to achieve human security is a question the global community is facing. Thanks. I have these suggestions to make, and I would like the participants, they can come up with questions if they like. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Alok, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Divya. You have made my task easier by summing up the papers presented by those 4 panelists. I think 4 of them were absent. So I can share a bit of my thoughts on interlinkages between human security, governance, state, and politics. I remember once a journalist asked Ban Ki-moon, the UN General Secretary, at that point of time, what is good governance according to you? And his very plain and simple answer was a smile on every face. I think these 4 words sums up the entire gamut of human security. And obviously human security could be ensured, could be achieved only when we have good governance. When we will have good governance, plethora of literature happens to be there, and we all have been reading in political science and other streams of social sciences how international organizations, multilateral bodies, they have defined good governance. There is a debate about that, but my understanding after reading all those literature is that society, we all know, is in a state of flux. It keeps changing, but the tools of governance are not changing. Now we are in an era of digitalization. We are a netizen, and now what we learned is small is beautiful sounds irrelevant. Now big is beautiful. We are in an era of big data where most of these multinational companies are thriving on big data, and big is beautiful now, big is convenient now. So this development has opened up a new front, new fronts of threat to human security. Especially, I'm trying to hint at the cyber world and the cyber crime. We are now in an era of cyber terrorism. So terrorism as non-traditional threat to security seems to be a story of the past, and cyber terrorism sounds quite new to us. Earlier we read that human security could be ensured if we are able to meet 3 basic needs: roti, kapda, or makan. That is the bread, clothes, and dwellings. Now we have come a long way where even these basic needs stands redefined. We now need Shiksha, Swasthya, Suraksha, that is education, security, and health. Then we need Bijli, Sadak, Pani, that is electricity, roads, and water. These are now you can say 9 basic needs. And to this I wish to add liberty as well as justice, 2 more. So total 11. Justice here means in a very broad sense, that is social, political, economic. So you have now maybe more than 11 basic needs which requires to be ensured to the individual to to claim that somewhere we have human security. The global leaders can claim to have achieved this global security. But see, whether at the national level or at the national level, they make goals, they make policies to meet those goals, but they have been using the same vehicle for implementing them. The bureaucracy and those other traditional institutions which have been existing in our political system. And I think we have read tremendous amount of literature about institutional failure. So most of these traditional institutions are, have disproved themselves, are in the state of rot today. So what I think, as social scientists, as policy leaders, as political leaders, we need to think about an alternative vehicle or an alternative, system of institution which could deliver governance to the mankind. But what could be that, alternative institution? How that alternative institution could be built? The global community, the academic community, those who are media, they are not breaking their heads in this direction. They are only, trying to blame it upon the state. The state is not doing this, the state is not doing that. Now, how far we can, keep expecting that everything has to flow from top to bottom? I think now the time has come where, when the state as an institution is failing, we need to think of an alternative solution from the bottom. And it is there that I think education has a great role to play. If we are able to impart genuine education to the citizens in different countries across the world, I think that would be the clear road to empowerment. And all those basic needs that I was talking about could be fulfilled. Even the institutions would work in right direction. Otherwise, you can have best of policies, you can have best of laws, you can have best of international regimes, but they will always be incapacitated. And I mean, they will always function under this the system of incapacity, because the men who are handling it, they are not going to come from planet Mars. They will be people from planet Earth only. So under such circumstances, education is the road to empowerment. But then, what kind of education, that we need to, have a discourse upon, because education is happening not only in India but across the world. But the prevailing system of education, I feel, has produced more and more number of intellectual criminals, and these intellectual criminals have damaged society more than the criminals who are booked under different sections of Indian Penal Code or some other penal laws. They can kill 4, 5, 10, 100 people, but these intellectual criminals, they strike at the very root of the society. So we need to have a genuine, thorough discourse on education nationwide and across the globe, so that what is required is to reset the thinking mind, that this mind thinks in the right direction. Otherwise, we have the same institution. We are unable to modernize it. On the name of modernization, what we do, we give them some computers and they train them how to handle those computers. But we are not trying to handle these men as material. So if we are able to do that, if we can, we academicians can think over it, that what kind of right education could be there, which could be imparted to the citizens across the world, that they become the right kind of social capital. If they have, if such people are there, and if they handle these institutions, I think things will automatically improve, and there would be a smile on every face. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Nandini. I think I can go on and on, but
thank you, sir. We learned a lot from your speech, and thank all the panelists. Thank Co-Chair Divya Mishra. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Rita. Thank you for collaborating with us in this conference. So this is the last session of today's conference. So tomorrow we will meet again. We have some more very good sessions, as well as we have valedictory session at the end. So here I want to end the session.
Thank you. We call it a day. We sign out then.
Yeah.